Here. S- all right. Um, well, I'm here, and I'm sorry I'm a little bit late today. I was actually doing some work for a client, and I kind of went down a rabbit hole. But it was actually really good news. She had gotten an offer late last week, and we were going through some offer negotiations and stuff, and they'd come back and was just giving her some feedback and some stuff. And the truth of the matter is, they gave her all really good news and everything. And one of the things I was really thrilled and excited about, I did some math on. Well, one of the things she negotiated her salary and when negotiated her hourly rate. It's ending up to be a consulting position, and because she negotiated her hourly rate, she was able to raise it up by $10. And given the time frame that she's going to be working contract before going perm, it's coming out to a significant amount of money, and actually is going to cover more than cover and leave a lot extra, um, what she paid me for my services. So I love that when that happens, and it happens a lot. Um, with the clients I work with, that's one of the things I aim to help them do is actually get paid what they're worth, and to do that. So it actually made me really feel great. Uh, so before I go even more down the tangent and everything, I just spent the last 2 minutes kind of talking about this. Um, but let's dig deep into a few little things that kind of came up this week. One of them was actually a study that was done by Stanford University about work from home and productivity from work from home. And they were able to pull data from um, different time periods. And what happened with the pandemic was really, really unique in the sense that work from home, the percentage of people who worked from home, starting in the late 1950s, early 1960s, would basically double every 15 years. And it started out at 0.4% of the working public basically worked from home. And it was basically people who were like working in family businesses or farms and stuff like that. Uh, Fast forward every 15 years, it would jump. Fast forward to the pandemic, all of a sudden, we all ended up working from home at some point or another, depending upon what you did. There were some needed jobs that were out there, and they had no choice. Good example is people who work in a supermarket. They unfortunately had to be there. Pharmacists, people on who worked in healthcare had to go to work. But people who worked in an office setting in corporate America, um, actually got to work from home. And the study actually talked about, um, you know, the percentages of people who work from home now or work a hybrid kind of situation. And it's kind of funny. We went from somewhere around, you know, 4% of the people working before the pandemic, working remotely, to now in between working remotely and working hybrid schedules. And again, it depends upon what job you do and everything. But about 40% of the working public works hybrid. The other thing, what they looked at is they looked at efficiency, so productivity. And one of the things they found out is due to the shift of people working from home or working a hybrid schedule, people who worked solely from home, solely remotely, had a reduction in productivity, anywhere between, I think it was 10 to 20% reduction in productivity. People who worked a hybrid schedule, it was either flat or it was slightly better, actually. They were a little bit more productive. Uh, So that says a lot about some of the changes and all that that's been going on. But one of the things that they kind of brought up, it's not necessarily that individuals were being less productive. It was it seemed to be the root cause was more about communication, leadership, and that ability to interact. Because now we are in different locales and we may be worldwide and stuff like that. What's happened is there's more distance between us. So that communication, that impromptu water cooler meeting, or being able to go and talk to somebody just casually, and then realize that hey, they might be able to help me in what I'm doing. Um, those communication lines ended up being strained, and we ended up working a little bit more in silos. And even though we have technology that's helped out, it seems that we've become more closed in, and it just has had an effect on productivity. Uh, what I read also, it seems that this phenomena is not going away. So don't worry. If you're working from home, you may have to work a hybrid schedule. But the truth of the matter is, the the cat's out of the bag. It's We're going to have some sort of work schedule depending upon what you do and where you do it and stuff, because it just kind of makes sense. And even though there might be a hit on productivity, um, there are other benefits that come along with it, namely, smaller resources that are needed for office space and desks and stuff like that. So it may end up actually, there might be a reduction in productivity, but the net effect may be flat or actually better. So I just thought that was a really interesting article, and thought it was something that was really just interesting that kind of floated out there, because everyone was talking about how much more productive they are at home and stuff like that. And I can tell for myself. I mean, I work from home. I'm here doing my own thing, kind of thing. And yeah, there's pulls on my time. And the truth being that you know some things may come up, and I have to be very diligent on making sure that I budget time for the things I need to do, put things on calendars, kind of the things I used to do when I was working a corporate 9 to 5 kind of thing. And I still work that way. Um, I lay out plans, what I plan on doing for today. Like today, my plan was to be on here live at noon. I've been here at noon the last 2 weeks. I want to continue to be here at noon the next 2 weeks. Again, it ended up that something came up and kind of have to shuffle that a bit. But sometimes it's more difficult to have that discipline to be able to say, "Hey, I, I'm going to do this now, and this is what it is." Especially when there are a lot of distractions that are out there. Now, I don't have kids, but I do have a 8-year-old Labradoodle that is, and I don't want to compare kids to my dog. Let's get that straight. Uh, but he he's got demands on my time too. He's We've trained him very well to let us know when he needs to go out or when he needs something. It's kind of funny. If his water bowl, he drinks a lot of water. I think it's the lab part in him. Um, but somehow or another, we've trained him, or he's trained us, that if his water bowl ends up being empty or low, he comes up to us, he'll nudge us, he'll cry a little bit, and then he'll lick his lips, or he'll stick his tongue out a little bit, and it's like saying, "Hey, I'm thirsty." If he needs to go to the bathroom, he'll let us know. And I can tell you, in the he's going to be 9 this year in October. In the 9 years that he's been around, I can count on one hand the number of times he's had an accident in the house, um, because he lets us know. But those are pulls on my time. Um, my wife has some health issues and stuff like that recently, and has been sick. So I've been working and taking care of her and doing different things and stuff like that. Those are pulls on my time. So, from productivity time, it's real easy to get off track, is I guess what I'm getting to and what I'm saying. Real easy to get off track. So I think once we work out the situation with the communications and the intercommunications and how we do that effectively, I think that will help with productivity. I think if we continue to work on and focus on some of the habits we had when we were in the office and continue to budget our day that way, I think you'll see productivity going back up. And then again, using technology and stuff like that, I use a program for my meetings and my webinars and stuff like that. They actually have a thing I can set up for co-working. And basically, it is a room where people can come in and go, and you can collaborate and you can do those things. And you can set up different rooms according to discipline. And basically, if I had an organization large enough, I could have people in different rooms and stuff like that. And I could pop in and say, hey, what's going on? And what do you need me for? All that stuff. But I guess the thing is, we just need to get a little bit smarter. And that this is, even though it's this advent of, you know, 40% of the working population are now working remote or hybrid, we just need to be a little bit more, it's still new, I guess is what I'm getting at. It's still new. So I think once we get some of the technical and some of the interpersonal things and getting rewired on how we interact with each other when we are sitting in different locations, I think that's going to be really powerful. And I think it'll open up a lot of possibilities for companies to hire outside of their geographic area. I think it'll give them opportunity to pull people with various skill sets from different locales, and will reduce the will re- end up inevitably reducing costs for them, because if they do hire somebody that's out of their main location, it's not a matter of them having to say, oh, hold on a second, I got to relocate you, which there's a cost in relocating. Oh, I have to not only pay for the relocation, but I'm going to lose a certain amount of time for you to get settled and get ready. You're going to have to look for a new home. You're going to need to look for this. You're going to need to look for that. So I'm going to take a hit on productivity. But the truth of the matter is, now you can just say, hey, stay put, work remotely, come in maybe once a quarter into the office. We'll have a hot seat desk for you, and then off you go back. And again, that opens up a whole bunch of different possibility. So again, I thought it was a real interesting article. You can actually go do a Google search and just do a search on uh, remote working, Stanford University, July 2023, and it should come up. They actually have a center that actually does this kind of research. I will tell you, I've read the article. You actually can download it. It's on a Google Drive. Uh, Gotta love academia. They share stuff, and it's really great stuff. It is an academic paper, so there's a lot of, it can be a little bit heavy at times. You can read the abstract, and you'll get the gist of it. But if you actually go into the research and you kind of do that, it is an academic paper, so don't be shocked. Do not be surprised if it's a little dry, a little, you know, just a little dry. But there's a lot of good information there, and I think it'll help inform us, not just the employees, but also leadership and business owners on kind of the things that are needing to be done. And I think one of the things that we need to also focus in on a lot of times, and my wife actually does this work with career professionals and with businesses. Uh, if there's slow growth or there is no growth in their organizations or in their career, it's actually a leadership problem. It's not necessarily an individual problem, it's a leadership problem. And what she means by that is a lot of times you're not stepping into that leadership role the way you need to. So it's really interesting work. I'm actually going to have her on hopefully next week, so we can talk a little bit more about this. But again, this study really interesting. Take a look at it. Again, check it out, Stanford University, and that's it. Now, every week I also talk about my latest blog post, and my latest blog post actually is about um, some of the most asked questions that my clients ask or ask me when they're preparing for an interview. Um, a lot of times my clients will come when I advocate people preparing for interviews, not just kind of rolling up there and kind of winging it. Uh, Again, I have family members that have done that, and it's hasn't worked out well. And then we sit down. I've talked to them and said, "Hey, you really can't. You need to take this seriously." Um, but I tell that to my clients too, and I've done this work for the better part of 25 years, 25, 30 years. And the reason why I'm saying this is this. You need to make sure when you go to your interview that you are prepared, that you've done your due diligence, you've done all that. Because again, they're going to throw things at you. But the one thing I get from my clients is this: at some point or another, as we're preparing, as we've done the mock interview and done some of that stuff, or as we're preparing to do the mock interview, you know, they'll inevitably ask me, what questions do you think they'll ask me? And what's kind of funny is, being that I've sat on the other side of the desk and asked the questions, being that I was the HR manager, the HR leader, the HR representative, the recruiter, the name all the different positions I've held within HR. A lot of times I was the person that trained the manager or gave them guidance on the questions to ask and stuff like that. So I have a pretty good idea on the questions that are going to be asked. Uh, in fact, I will usually, if my clients come to me and they'll say, "Okay, I've got an interview. Who do you think I'm going to meet?" And this actually happened recently. Um, I went, "Well," I said, "according to the email, you're going to meet with X, you're going to meet with Y, and I'm going to tell you because of your background and everything like that. I took a look at some of the other people in the organization. You might have this person also interview you." And sure enough, all three people showed up at the interview. So again, I have some experience in this stuff and kind of understand kind of the inner workings. Doesn't matter what organization it is. It almost seems like everyone works off of a similar playbook. So I will tell you, when they do ask, what kind of question do you think they'll ask? It's a bit of a loaded question because there are hundreds, hundreds, if not thousands, of questions with different variations to the question, how it's asked. But to be honest with you, there's usually five questions that are kind of standard. And it's almost like there's a mysterious manager's interviewing handbook, where people are told to ask. Now, I'm just going to tell you this: there is no mysterious manager's handbook, and to be honest with you, a lot of managers uh, do not get their positions because they had some special leadership skills training, or they have been developed over the years to have the special leadership training and stuff like that. I've done some of it actually for organizations that were working on building leadership capacity within the organization, but a lot of that was when I worked overseas, especially domestically here in the United States. It rarely happens. Sometimes it does if it's the person is deemed to be a high potential person, but even then, A lot of times what it ends up being is almost like a training boot camp where, the newly christened manager goes in and they spend a week learning different things. They get kind of bombarded with all these different things. They get a binder and say, "Here, you're a new manager. You need to know this stuff." It's better than nothing, but it's probably not enough. It hasn't built that acumen. So again, a lot of times, you know, the people that are interviewing you, especially if they're new managers, it was a senior manager saying, "Hey, I think we should make this person manager because they were a good individual contributor." And when it comes to questions, there are about 5 questions I will tell you almost certainly you're going to be asked. And the first one starts off as the beginning of the interview, "Tell me about yourself." And honestly, this question can trip people up more times than you can imagine. So you really need to be careful on how you answer this question. And it's a great opportunity to make a positive impression, but it's also an opportunity to make a negative impression. So what I tell my clients is two things, two ways to kind of approach it. One is to kind of give a brief overview of kind of the professional background, some of the highlighting some of your experiences, how it relates to how you understand the position, and then this way you kind of get an understanding. The other thing that I used to tell people, and I still do sometimes, depending upon the organization and depending upon my client and how comfortable they feel about doing, some of this stuff. Um, Sometimes I actually have them ask, "Where would you like me to begin?" And it actually gives them a little bit of guidance where they can say, "Oh, okay, I'm going to give them the information that they're looking for," and then kind of go from there. So again, it is the most common question asked when it comes to starting an interview. The other two usually are, and they're used a lot less. "Tell me about yourself" seems to be like 90% of the time gets asked. Sometimes you'll have an interviewer ask, "What do you know about the position?" And you'll be surprised how people get tripped up by that question because they haven't reviewed that job description since they applied for the job. And even when they applied for the job, they may not have really looked at it. Um, and then the other thing is, "What do you know about the company?" And you'd be surprised. There are a lot of people, they have not looked up what the company does. You'd be surprised. Again, they just kind of roll up and say, "Hey, I'm here." So keep that in mind. Tell me about yourself. One of the top 5 questions you're probably going to be asked. Now, the next two questions, um, I will tell you this. Um, you're probably going to be answered. You've probably been asked it, and you're probably going to be asked it again. Um, you know, they're usually in this order, but sometimes if a manager or an interview wants to spice things up, they may invert them and change them up a little bit to maybe throw you off your game a little bit. But the next two questions inevitably get asked in some way, shape, or form. The first one is, "What are your strengths?" And you know, again, it's they want to know if you're self-aware, if you understand the things that you're good at and the value you can bring. And that's what you want to make sure you focus in on is, here are my strengths, and you want to tie it back to specifically what you can offer the company. Now, the next question inevitably is the inverse of that. "Tell me your weakness." And I know it is the most dreaded question uh, during an interview. The only question that might be more dreaded than "What are your weakness?" or "What are your weaknesses?" is, "Tell me a time when you failed." And honestly, that is a different version of a weakness question. But if you get asked, "What are your weaknesses?" you need to be honest. Again, they want to understand if you're self-aware, if you understand it. And everyone understands people do things or have skills that they're really good at, and then things that they're not as good as. So some of the things that you want to kind of want to do is you want to talk about maybe something that was or something that is a weakness, but you need to be diligent about, and talk about how you have the things you've done to overcome those challenges, and then frame it from that. And what I tell people is this: choose a weakness that isn't directly related to the position, explain how you've kind of worked to overcome it, and then be honest and demonstrate a willingness to learn and to grow with it, or learn and grow from it, pardon me. So again, those are probably the first top three that you'll be asked. The next one, I will tell you this, is a softball question, or I believe is a softball question, um, because quite honestly, if you're not unable to answer this question, it's partly because you didn't do any homework, or you didn't give it any past thought or anything like that. You didn't do the research you needed to do this. And this question honestly is great, because if you've done your research, you can talk about alignment and values and stuff like that. And it actually is a really easy question to answer. And the question is this: why do you want to work for the company? And the reason why they ask it, everyone wants to be wanted. Okay. The manager wants you to want to work for the company, work for them, work to do this job that they need help with. So if you do a little pre-work and you understand kind of what their mission statement is, and kind of what their values and their culture and the things that are there, and you do your research and you look online and you look at things like, you know, Glassdoor and stuff like that, and you check out kind of what people are saying about the company. And again, you'll get negatives and positive, and here you want to highlight the positives, but you want to talk about where there's an alignment between what the company stands for and what you stand for, and why you are the obvious choice. Okay, now we're down to the fifth and final question. Um, Usually gets asked at some point or another, and that is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Now, if you're earlier in your career, maybe this is a little bit easier to answer. It can be a little bit more pie in the sky. Your mid career, still an easier question to ask. But if you're late career, it can be a pitfall kind of question, because they may realize that you in 5 years may not want to be working. You may want to retire, or you may want to be doing something totally different, or whatever it is. You know, the best way to answer this is be honest about and realistic about what your career goals are. And again, this is going to cause you need to have some forethought, and you're going to need to think about it ahead of time, and really dig deep in kind of what that is, and then explain how you want to achieve those goals, and how it would tie into the company and your new role, and how you see yourself progressing within the company. Again, it's part of, you know they want to be wanted as much as you want to be wanted as well. So again, those are usually the five questions that will show up inevitably on almost any interview. um, you know Again, preparation is going to be key. Making sure you just don't roll up and just say, "Hey, I'm here," and then kind of wing it. So keep in mind, prepare for these questions. Think ahead of time how you're going to answer these questions, and then come to your interview ready. And if you do those things, you'll knock your interview out of the park. And again, resumes get interviews, interviews get offers. And ideally, what we want to do is we want to get to an offer stage. Well, we're a little bit over time today. Sorry about that. But we'll be back next week. And I'm looking forward to talking to you guys next week. So have a great rest of the week, and bye.